have some problems with some things that are being said out in the community, that the WRX isn't selling. Let's talk about it. Let me share with you some actual facts, some data, some things to support what's actually going on. And at the end of the day, what matters is if you guys are out there buying a car, do you like the car, yes or no? That's all that matters to you. However, I have problems and issues sometimes with vloggers, with certain people, with people in the comments that say certain things about a platform, and it honestly ends up hurting the platform overall, and it's not the truth. So let me jump into a few specifics why I actually think the WRX is selling really well.
I just bought a new whip, spend a couple thousand just to cruise it.
So there's a lot of opinions out there on the new WRX, and it all has to do with looks. People aren't talking about the performance, and if they're talking about the performance, they're reading the specs on a spec sheet from the outgoing VA model to the new VB model, and they're like, oh, it's only a 3% or a 3 horsepower increase in power. And they're really not looking at all the details, but a lot of it has been around the looks. And honestly, guys, the looks of the WRX, it has always been controversial. Is this one more controversial? Yeah, probably, just because of plastic cladding, bumpers, different things. And I can't change your guys' opinions on that. It is what it is. Although I will say this, you guys need to see a car in person before you judge it, because in person, these cars look a lot better than they do online. But back to the point, the WRX, there's a lot of people that are saying it's not selling well, it's a failure, Subaru is struggling, yada, 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 yada. I'm gonna throw a screenshot up here for you guys to see that the WRX had its highest selling month in sales in February in the history of the WRX. Now, my graph only goes back to 2016. I can't go back later, but February, if we're looking at the last 6 years, 7 years, February was the highest selling month for the WRX that it's had in the last 6 to 7 to 8 years. That's pretty impactful. And if you look at the start of this year, from January and February, it's within a few units of being the best selling WRX in the last 7 or 8 years in the first 2 months of this year. Now, people are saying when it hasn't sold, it's not doing well, there's a lot on lots. Well, let's talk about that. Subaru has flooded the marketplace with WRXs. They've increased their inventory production significantly. So number one, there's just a lot of cars out there. Number two, another thing to think about as we look through this, when you look at when the 2022 came out, these cars weren't available in January, February, March. Very few of them were even hitting the lots. Until about March, April, May is when people actually started getting the 2022s, because Subaru was trying to clear out all of their STIs, all of their VA WRXs. They're trying to get rid of all the outgoing models. And so when you look at 2022, you can't compare that full year in sales. Now, what we can do in 2023 is we're going to be able to compare the entire year in terms of sales to see how it does. And I'm placing a bet that it is going to be in the top 2 in terms of sales over the last 8 years in WRXs. So the feedback and the challenge I have with content creation and people out there is they don't do enough research to really give an opinion on something, and it actually ends up hurting these brands. I'm okay, everybody can have their opinion, but some of this is just inaccurate and wrong. Let me talk about 2 more points really quick for you guys. Another thing is, I think in some markets this car does really well, in some markets this car doesn't do as well. In some markets, people don't care about all-wheel drive. In some markets they do, depending on your temperatures, depending on the weather, depending on the conditions, everything. There are factors that just play a role in if people want all-wheel drive or not. When you go with an all-wheel drive car, guess what? Your miles per gallon is gonna go down. It just is. It's drivetrain loss. There's just a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. And sure, you could argue the Golf R still gets great gas mileage, and it does. But when you're looking at Subarus, they've not always been, especially the WRX, is chosen for miles per gallon. So maybe electric movement, maybe not a need for all-wheel drive. Those are contributing factors. I think a lot of the bad that people gave this car when it came out about looks caused a lot of people to not even look at it, myself included. I was under that umbrella. I listened to vloggers, I saw it online, and until I went and saw one in person twice, and then when I actually drove one That's when everything changed for me, when I drove the car. Now, I can't convince you guys to buy a car because you don't like the looks of it. You don't like the looks of it, you don't like the looks of it, but see it in person. It was like when I had the Supra. Some people are iffy about that car because the fake vents, this or that, but you see that car in the wild, out in person, it looks like a supercar. It looks amazing. Now, I'm not trying to say the WRX is a supercar and it looks amazing. It looks good. I think some modifications help this car, but when you see the car in person, and you still feel that way, that's fine. Another thing that I think could be contributing to good sales is high interest rates right now, guys. It's really hard to get great interest rates, but I will say this, Subaru, I rarely ever go through a manufacturer for auto loans because I normally can get a much better rate from my credit union. Through Subaru and their partnership with Chase, in January, I got in the 3s on my interest rate. It's incredible, and it's still really, really low. So compared to all credit unions everywhere else out there, 7, 10, 12%, guys, that's factoring into sales. Now, as you look at 2021, 2020, 2022, COVID's impacted a lot of stuff in supply chain, but I think 2023 will actually be the year where we can fully look at how well this car is or isn't doing. Now, right now across the nation, in some parts of the country, you can get the car for MSRP. In fact, in some places in the country, if you get on the Facebook groups, some of them are getting them at invoice or getting them, you know, basically $2 or $3 grand under sticker, which is a phenomenal deal. It really is. For the performance this car delivers for the price, it's great. You know, for me, I got a little bit under MSRP, but here in Utah, these cars aren't struggling to sell. They get on the lots and they go really quick. Here in Utah, people want all-wheel drive, and manual transmissions are doing really well. I think another thing that potentially, in my opinion, Subaru hurt themselves on is they made a lot of features available to the GT trim, you know, in terms of adaptive dampers, in terms of drive modes, in terms of eyesight technology, and that car only has an automatic. Well, we know that 70, 80, I think it's like mid 80% of Subaru WRX buyers want it in a manual transmission. So you put all the features that everybody would like in an automatic. Imagine what would happen if, let's say in the 2024 or 2025 model year, they make a lot of those features down into the limited trims, the premium trims. So imagine if you could get all those features or some of those features in these trims. And the Recaros come in the GT, they don't come in the other trim levels. So guys, if you really look at kind of the baseline of this, the car's actually doing pretty well. And for those of you saying, well, there's so many cars sitting out there, well, guess what? And I've talked to people, I've talked to Subaru, they flooded the market with these cars. Whereas manufacturers today are playing the game of, oh, our inventory is low, but we're gonna charge you a markup, we're gonna charge you all these fees. Subaru's pumped out the inventory. Guys, don't believe it. Subaru WRX is selling well. If you don't like one, that's okay. If you love them, great. But if you guys are a vlogger, content creator, a writer, a journalist for these cars, do right by it and make sure you drive the car. Make sure you look at the facts, make sure you look at the things. But, you know, I feel it's always my job to be as unbiased as I possibly can be, bring you guys the truth no matter what consequences come from it. That is what I think the truth is, and that's what I really think is happening. Some people have a hard time adapting to change, but reality is the car's doing well. Guys, if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Austin. This is Gone in 60. We will catch you on the next video.